To my way of thinking, we have Terry Payne, known as Mr. Snipe, 1945. He's a well-known email blogger and commentator with a number of interesting thoughts on what's happening nationally and regionally throughout the United States of America. Thanks for joining us today, Terry.
Welcome. Thank you, Fred.
All right, let's get right to it. Last time we had a conversation, we spent a bit of time on the border issues. And believe it or not, 7 months later,
nothing much has changed.
Still not much has changed. We've got a judge in Florida. The Attorney General for Florida did some judge shopping and found her a conservative-leaning judge out in the Panhandle who was able to block portions of that article. I think it's called Article 42 that would have ended this week. Today, as we record this, it basically ended yesterday. That would that essentially put some things in place for folks who wanted to come to America, but that and it would have ended. But that's been blocked. But we're still at the same point where we haven't had any real new legislation that's going to pass both houses of Congress and reach the president's desk for him to consider. So basically, we're pretty much operating under whatever the president of the United States decides he wants to do. But the issue is still the same. We do have some rules for people coming into this country, but the fact of the matter, from what I can see, the fact of the matter is that, quite frankly, no matter what the rules are, we've simply got more people trying to get into this country, South America, Haiti, and Cuba, and we don't get very many numbers, as much numbers on Ukrainians that are coming across the ocean to get here, but they are still coming through on both borders, both the northern border with Canada and obviously what's happening in Mexico, although Mexico is cooperating much better than they did before. But the quote crisis is still there. Do you think that if President Biden had allowed the border wall to be completed, do you think that would have stopped the crisis?
I think that's one component of it. But even when we had the border wall almost completely complete, we still have folks that between the ports of entry, meaning like Juarez and in the El Paso passage, and then in Juarez, you still have people that slip through the border. But the problem now is not only we don't have the border wall even being constructed, although some states are trying to get the money back, so they can build the wall themselves with materials. But now with the Title 42 extinguishing itself, even though we have Florida, it's only one of the 49 states that's fighting that. The fact remains that yesterday, once the Biden administration allowed the pandemic executive order that Trump enacted, which had Title 42 attached to it, once they allowed that to expire, the Supreme Court no longer has any voice in the matter. If that Title 42, if the pandemic had been left in place, the Supreme Court, with the 6-3 conservative vote, no doubt would have enacted Title 42 again. But because the Biden administration allowed that public order on health to expire, Title 42 with it expired, and the Supreme Court has no voice in the matter. So it expired yesterday. And my understanding, again, I'm not an expert on the Title 42. I just know that the two components of it, which were the most effective, was that the Border Patrol agents then had the authority to take illegal aliens and take them back to their countries via aircraft, buses, whatever, or return them to Mexico where they stayed in Mexico. Now that's not the case. Now you have 1,500 military troops down there, but they're not there really to keep illegal immigrants from coming to the country. They're basically helping them come into the country safely, I guess is the correct word. So we had somewhere between 6 to 7 million illegal aliens in the last 2 years that are coming to the country, and God knows where they are. We do know that many of them, have health concerns. We know that there's Chinese. What I don't understand, part of these folks that are coming into the country, I don't know how the numbers of them is, and nobody does. but there's a number of these Chinese military age males that are coming across the border also. And why in the world are the Chinese, who are dictators, why would they allow their military age men to come across the border? They're funding them, by the way. Why would they allow them to come into Mexico, funded by the Chinese government, into the United States? What is purpose do these Chinese that are coming into the country have? That's the big concern I have. I'm also concerned about the terrorists, because we know that there are a number of terrorists over the past 2 years that have come into the country. I don't have that number. I don't think Homeland Security certainly doesn't have the number. So those are my concerns. It's what I would call the administration's plan for chaos, is what I call it. It's not just immigration. It's also what's changed since you and I talked last time was, I think there's like 9 or 10 big things that keep the United States from being the number one person to kind of keep order in the world. Deterrence, I guess, is the correct word. I mean, we pulled out of Afghanistan. The Chinese now have control of that air base, which had just been upgraded. We allowed that Chinese surveillance balloon to cross across the country. In Anchorage, Alaska, in 2021, we had a Alaska mini summit with the Chinese, and the Chinese diplomats just sat there and blasted our guys, and our guys kind of just sat there, Fred, kind of with the what's going on salute, and just meekly took that. And then we had Russia in 2021 also had this major cyber attack on all of our defense and our financial institutions. And Biden's response to that was he talked with Putin and basically just asked Putin to please stay away from some of our critical infrastructures, as opposed to a real threat or deterrence. When Biden was asked what he would do if Russia attacked Ukraine, Biden's response was, well, is it going to be a minor incursion? Well, that's not exactly what happened. And Biden consistently wouldn't meet with, I know why he wouldn't meet with, but he wouldn't meet with the Mohammed bin Salman, who's the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, one of our biggest allies. And yeah, he's a dictator also, but he's the only stability in that region. And let's see, I had a couple other things I wrote down. Biden's White House disclosed it was eager to enter into the concessions for this dangerous Iran nuclear deal at a time when both Iran, China, and Russia had entered into this strategic partnership. As soon as he was inaugurated, Biden administration moved the United States away from Israel, restored financial aid to the Palestinian terrorists, and publicly and privately, bombarded the Netanyahu government. Then as we talked about, he stopped all construction of border wall and opened the border. There's about 6 to 7 million illegal aliens, and this Title 42 has certainly enhanced more cartel activity on the importation of drugs, human trafficking, and national security violations. I agree with you from the last conversation that we can't completely stop people using drugs. As long as we're in a free society, there's going to be demand for drugs, just like in alcohol. Prohibition didn't work very well, did it? Because you got this huge demand for drugs. So the only way you can really stop it is to try to stop it at the border. And even then, you're going to have stuff that gets through. And I guess the last thing I just wrote down was the Pentagon's woke agenda has really devastated the old volunteer military recruitment quotas. I mean, I was talking to a fellow who's an Army Volunteer Special Forces the other day, and he's wounded in Afghanistan and whatever. And he's very upset. You can understand. He has a lot of friends that were one of his best friends in Afghanistan stepped on a IUD and blew him apart, and they were holding his buddy and what was left of him. So military folks who serve the country and stuff, when they see what's happening to the military, they very discouraged. Anyway, those things together kind of, what can I say? They embolden our enemies, I guess is the correct word. Some of our allies judge us as unreliable, and a lot of the neutrals assume that we're not worth, we're descending in our military and our social culture, and they don't want to join us. They're going to go the other side, whatever that other side is. So that to me is kind of the biggest thing that's permeated since you and I talked. It's just kind of our deterrence as a military and a social power is going south. And I honestly, people can disagree about their political persuasions. I understand that. I mean, I'm a little bit funny. I'm kind of right of until the hum, but I at the same time am very cognizant that the position that a lot of Republicans take, that we shouldn't have any abortions, that's a losing battle. And I don't think that's right. I think women have the right to have an abortion. I don't think we ought to be having an abortion the 9th month after the child is born. But I just don't think we should be federally funded. But I think a woman has a right to have an abortion, at least the first, 6 months. But so I've got a lot of I'm liberal on a lot of social issues, but I am concerned about the overall, our ability to deter violence in the country. I'm worried that China, with the prospect that maybe the Republican president will be, and whether it's Trump or someone else with the same policies, whether they're going to invade Taiwan. I'm concerned about that.
Well, I mean, that's a lot to unpack in the time we have here. It looks like we're going to be breaking up this conversation into a couple of pieces here so everybody can unpack it. But from the standpoint, let's take the first thing. From the standpoint of the border itself, what is the general conservative view of what should be done? We can put up the wall, but they've already proven that they can saw through it, and they can still find ways to dig under it. What is going to be the solution up there? The Biden administration is not necessarily letting everybody through. They do have to go through some kind of vetting process to go through. We're even trying to get them. They even have to apply ahead of time, online, on the app on the phone. All of them got cell phones who come up through here for the most part. Most of them do anyway.
Right.
They can apply on the phone to get here. If they don't apply to get here, then they're being turned back, turned away. If you apply to get here and they do have a sponsor, that gives them somewhat of a leg up to possibly get with that sponsor until they complete the standard process for applying for citizenship, that kind of thing. But what is the general feeling that you're hearing from the conservative side of the movement here is that basically we just need to shut down any other immigration until we legally sort all of this out and get something that most of the Congress can agree to. What are we saying? What do we want to do? Do we want to totally cut down on immigration, or do we just want to improve what legally we have in place?
Well, there's two parts to immigration. The part that you're talking about is legal immigration. And I don't know of any Republican that doesn't believe that we ought to have legal immigration. I'm a legal immigrant. My dad was a legal immigrant. I'm a naturalized American citizen, and my dad is too. My dad was. We were both born in Great Britain. The issue is we still need a legal immigration system, but the issue is illegal immigration. Unfortunately, once an immigrant crosses that border, by our laws, they're illegal. Now, it's true that they can go through a legal process, but most are not. The ones that are coming, the 6 to 7 million illegals that are coming across that border are not applying for legal or asylum. If they do get caught, by the way, by the immigration authorities, what's happening now under the Biden administration is they go for a judge and they're supposed to have a court hearing. They never show up for it. But that's just a minority. Most of them that come across that border we never see again, and they're transported to, well, some have been transported, I saw, to the vice president's home.
Texas and Florida have been shipping them out. But it's the same thing. Once they are found not to have a sponsor there with them that they're going to, and not to have filled out any paperwork, they are being deported back to Mexico or to their country at our expense.
That may be so. I don't have any data on that. What the conservative position is you do everything you can do to strengthen the border, whether the wall, the more agents, returning immigrants that are caught, the ones that are caught. We know we only catch in 20, even when the wall was there and under Trump, there were only 25% of the illegal immigrants were being caught, apprehended, okay? Those were being returned back to either Mexico or back to their country. Let's say that the other 80% are under Trump, enter the country. The only way that you can, under conservative view, that you can then control illegal immigration is if you have voter ID, not voter ID, but you have the system in E-Verify. Under E-Verify, which McDonald's uses, by the way, under E-Verify, if you don't have proof that you're an American citizen and you go into that system, then you're deported. The only way you'll ever stop illegal immigration in this country, even with all the border security, is in fact if they can't have a job. There's no reason for them to be here if they can't have a job. They can't get some of our social benefits.
But
So
that's the whole point. But that's
they are or not an American citizen.
But that's the economic
they
point.
Can't get those benefits.
Many of them would not get jobs unless if American employers would not employ them. Whenever we get,
right.
I just look around my city. Whenever a roof job needs to get done, the first set of folks who come in after the owner of the company comes in and gives the survey and brings out all the material, the next group of people that I see working that are stripping down the roof and getting the information, getting the infrastructure in place, appear to me to be immigrants of some sort, because none of them are speaking English.
That's
once
correct.
they
Same thing here.
They get the stuff up, that's done. Then the owner will come back after they put the stuff up, and what appear to be basically Americans, usually African Americans and white Americans, will come in and put the final shingles on the roof, and it's done. But that tearing up all that is generally done by immigrants. If employers wouldn't employ them, they wouldn't have jobs.
Well, under E-Verify, we have two problems. First of all, the big guys like McDonald's, okay, but the big AT&T company, let's say it's AT&T, and they're installing cable, okay. What you say is exactly right. Even though AT&T might have E-Verify, their subcontractors do not, and subcontractors mean in many cases people that hire less than 10 people, okay. They're not required under our current laws to use E-Verify. So the big contractor, the big building company, whatever the name of it is, uses E-Verify, and so the people that they work for directly, have to be American citizens or naturalized citizens or green card holders. But the little subcontractors do not require them. So what you see is exactly right. I see it all the time here in Cherokee County, although we're a very low minority populated country, except county, except for Cherokee Indians. I see the roofers here, the roofers on my house here, those guys. They're great, but they don't speak a word of English either. I'm sure that they may be green card holders. I don't know that for a fact.
So here we go. One of the first things concerning immigration is to get all employers to use the E-Verify system so that at least we can track those persons who coming here and want to get jobs. Everybody should be under E-Verify. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what I'm hearing, but that's strongly opposed by the Democratic Party.
Strongly opposed. So, but I have not seen that put in any legislation. How do we any legislation?
I believe it has been. I know E-Verify has been proposed several times, but it doesn't make it through the House and Senate. Even under Trump, it wasn't, or in the Bush, it made it through the. It never made it through both houses. Sort of the same way that voter ID, which is I mean, you and I know we can't go and check out a book at the library without showing our credentials. You just don't do that. But yet voter ID has been turned down in the country primarily by the liberal part of the political mechanisms, and because they say it impacts on minority voting. But we know in Alabama, there's several examples show that that's not true. And Alabama has voter ID. Universal's had it for a number of years. And when they enacted voter ID in Alabama, the minority vote went up, not down. It went up.
So putting either a full phalanx of troops at the border or completing the border wall entirely is not going to stop the run of people that are getting into the United States across the.
No, it's going to impact on some. The only way, I agree with you, the only way you're going to entirely get a control, well, first of all, the legal immigration ought to continue. I do think there ought to be limits on it, on how many legal immigrants, just like there's limits on visas that are come into the country. But on the illegal side of things, once they cross that border, we have no way of tracking those folks. So the only way, once they get across the border, that you can have any control over illegal immigration is to ensure that the magnet for being here, which is employment, number one, and number two, the social benefits. I mean, I saw some studies that show that compared to second or third generation immigrants, the number of benefits that illegal immigrants are getting on our social welfare systems is over two. I mean, there's like 16 or 18 different, they're all called welfare, but they're not all really welfare programs. Some are welfare, but most of them are other benefits such as WIC, women, infants, and children, you know. So until you have a system that you can identify where these people are employed or not, employable as a citizen or not, or as a green card holder, you can't stop. The magnet for the employment is there. And once you have that magnet there and you don't stop that, you're not going to stop illegal immigration.